Good afternoon and welcome again and welcome back to Automotive Logistics and Supply Chain Live, this follow-on session from the last one. So this session is focused on finished vehicle logistics, and we'll be looking at the issues surrounding improving agility and flexibility within finished vehicle logistics. So today we'll discuss some of the digital tools, the processes that can help OEMs and logistics service providers to improve outbound networks, including load factors, asset utilization, and quality. I'm joined today by a great lineup of speakers, including Nick Thompson, who's operations manager, finished vehicle logistics for FCA North America. We have Enrique De La Peña, senior manager for Mexico-US operations from Hyundai Glovis, and Christoph Seitz, who's co-owner and CEO of CFR Rinkens. So today, as I said, we're going to be looking at improving agility and flexibility within finished vehicle logistics. I'd like to start the section off by asking Enrique just to cover off a couple of slides on some of the work and some of the strategies he's using to, of course, improve the network there. So Enrique, nice to have you here. And please go ahead and tell us what you've been up to and how things are working for you there at Hyundai Glovis in Mexico.
Thank you, Neemish. Let me share my screen. And yes. So, one of the first process that we handling in Hyundai Glovis, I'm in charge for Mexico-US operation. There is a usual or processing for all OEMs, starting from the assembly plan, going to the dealer, and talking about the agility and flexibility. There are many changes as we handling the finished vehicle processing. We handle some processing the yard in our plants, some others handle in a stock transfer yards, and other handle in the ports, some processing. This is an example that I'm showing to the audience here, how is some of the example that is you can handle it, and there are differences and variances on this. On my next slide, talking about agility and flexibility on the daily operations. We have all members involved in the daily operation. It's very important that they be informed what is happening on the daily process and what is the next steps for the vehicle that we are gonna ship out or that we're gonna prepare. And having a system or a GPS location to validate with devices how we can respond to the time to the customer, how is located the vehicle is a wonderful, and most of the yards is the process that we operate to have control for all our inventories. So another point that we can see it is consolidate all the logistics process in one system. Does reduce the time and response for internal and external customers that can give us some expedite response to the customers. And at the end, the traceability, use the agility and flexibility. If your traceability is to complete the whole operation process, it's vice versa. You can go either way in the opposite side, because it's easy for us and for people that is working in the automotive industry for finished vehicles. And one of the talking about quality, moving to the quality requirements during this pandemic, we're seeing a lot of requirements due to the industry when down on budget, on sales, and people or market require a better or a bigger product with better beneficial with the same price. Use the market variances we had to develop, because during this pandemic we have a resource limited for human people, and does increase the demand on quality, not increase demand on sales. Just is about quality to provide a better product with less resources. Just that one of the questions that I have is invest on quality will be a long term for our company and just to achieve customer requirement. The relationship will continue until when? This is one of the questions that I have to ask for companies. They don't just want to achieve the customer requirement and don't invest on long-term process. And I would like to end with logistics services with quality give us satisfaction that is priceless and usual is followed by new volume or customer. Yeah, with this one, I'm gonna finish my presentation.
Great, thank you, Enrique. That's really interesting to, and thanks for sharing those slides there. They're very clearly laid out, and you can see that it's interesting to see the whole process and the number of partners and the chains within there. And of course, syncing all of those up is a critical element to that. While we have you here, Enrique, let me just ask you, in terms of the market there in Mexico at the moment, how are things looking at the moment? Of course, we know that there's quite an increase in cases there, and of course, that of course causes issues within the network, and as you mentioned on the human resources element of this as well.
Yes, of course, the demand or the volume is low. Usually we have to provide a better quality. During the Cox Automotive that I saw on the pollution, is that they're gonna reduce, most of the people is reducing around 70% what they're gonna spend to acquire a new vehicle. Because that's is calling our attention, or mainly in my side, my attention to do and offer a better quality in our service, because from the vehicle, from the origin to the destination, needs to be intact or don't have any exception to arrive to the final customer. At the end, we are the final customer.
Yeah, sure. And in terms of the network there in Mexico, how's the network capacity there in terms of the ports and the rail network? Is that all kind of seem to be coming back online in a good way?
Well, yeah, there is a lot of excess of rail cars in talking about tri-levels that we use, but bi-levels is a different case. But for rail network, I don't see big impact on the distribution and processing in tri-levels. For bi-levels, it's all known that there are some opportunities for the industry. Then they are fixing, they are just renewing, and those transfer tri-levels to bi-levels, and it's underway. It's according to demand. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Enrique. We'll come back and, of course, include be part of the conversation. Next up, I'd like to invite Nick Thompson to share some thoughts and to share what's happening from an FCA perspective and how the network's kind of adapting and changing during, of course, this whole period.
Yeah, for sure. So this year it's been all about agility and flexibility, I would say. Everybody, I think, can relate to that with the challenges we've seen in trying to operate through the pandemic and flex and be flexible with the ever-changing regulations from different local governments, things like that. With our plants going down initially during the peak of the crisis and then coming back up. There's been a lot of need to work with our partners, which we couldn't have done it without them, to respond appropriately and get the right processes in place to make it safe to return to work and get things back to normal. So, we found out through that initially, communication was going to be key with our partners. So we set up a lot of processes right away to make sure we were as transparent as possible about the changing regulations, the different things that we were putting in place from a process standpoint to keep the people that work for us safe and all the partners that work with us safe. So it was important that we had a good forum and a good process to make sure that that was clear, and then also to make sure the changes in the production plan, when we were going to come back up, how we were going to come back up, all of that was transparent as possible as well. So when we did resume producing vehicles, we were ready to go from a logistics standpoint, and so that was key for us over the last 6 months, and now having gone through that and having a few months of production back to pre-pandemic levels, we're seeing things stabilize for the most part into the new normal, I would call it. So,
oh, that's great. And in terms of, I guess, managing that whole process with the suppliers, because you of course have a huge network there, right, of facilities, and you work with the trucking companies, the railroads, the ports, etc., right? So did you have to kind of put together a playbook for each one of those kind of elements, or was it more of a collaborative effort to get everybody on the same page?
So I think at a high level, it was definitely a collaborative situation. So we were having weekly forums with our entire network to keep everybody up to speed as to when we were going to come back up, what the type of requirements would be for employees to come back to our facilities and things like that. So we did have that forum on a weekly basis, and then we also were meeting individually with some of our critical partners to make sure they were ready to go for as those pieces of business came back into play, when the ports needed to resume with the vessel loadings and things like that, and when our service providers at our plants needed to be there. There are some different requirements based on the type of service that each provided. So we did have some unique conversations, but we also had the high level with all of our network as well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. And in terms of, so versus where you were, because obviously everything came to a halt, and production stopped and vehicles stopped stopped moving. But I guess there was still some sales going on in that time, because of course a big portion of your sales is SUVs and trucks, right? And they were of course classified differently. So how did you manage to keep those vehicles moving?
So the supply chain, it's really amazing that it kept the country moving. I would say the guys in the field that are actually driving the trucks and working the trains, they continue to operate at a less than normal level, I would say, but they continue to move goods and services and things like that across the country. So it was no different for the finished vehicle side. We continued to deliver vehicles. What was important through the communication chains that we had set up was ensuring that we could communicate which locations were accepting, as states were shutting down and reopening, making sure there was a good process in place to communicate that. So we would send out daily communications to our different partners to say, here's the guys that you can go to, and here's the guys you can't because of the situation with COVID. So, yeah. We continue to run at a less than normal level through the whole thing, which really is amazing, and we couldn't have done it without the guys in the field. Yeah.
Well, you're always reliant upon your service providers, right?
Yes.
To tow along with you, right? That's the important part there. And now you're kind of coming back. Production is improving.
We're basically back to pre-COVID levels, or pre-pandemic peak levels. So all of our plants are back operational, and we've seen positive trend in demand ever since kind of the bottom when the peak first hit. So things are looking optimistic for us, and we're back operating as the new normal. I would say there's some things that we've had to change, processes we've had to put in place, but
sure.
But I'd say we're back stable and operating as normal.
Great, that's good to hear, and I guess everybody's happy about that as well, right? Everybody can get back to work and start to resume some kind of normal activity, at least on that side of things. So that's great to hear. We'll come back. I'd like to just ask Christoph to join us and share some of his thoughts. Of course, Christoph, you're a specialist in the industry, providing cars in shipping cars and containers all around the world. What's that situation been for you? Because obviously challenges in shipping lanes and of course the different regions and countries that you operate in as well, right?
Right. Well, I think, kind of looking back to the middle of March when everything started to go downhill, we looked at about 6 weeks, I want to say, of severe downturn in volume. We never really stopped operating, but for some of our accounts, the volumes basically dropped to zero for about 6 to 8 weeks. But since then, the existing business has essentially come back to normal, similar to what Nick just described. We're basically to pre-pandemic levels in terms of our existing business. But the big change for us has been that started essentially towards the end of March is, and I need to preface, we're a niche provider, right? We don't do the mass volumes. We do decent volumes, but it's more on a niche side of lanes that just work better for containerization. And what definitely sticks out for us is on the business development side is that the amount of new projects, the amount of spot business requests, getting calls for ad hoc solutions has dramatically increased. And I want to say we've been able to get already a couple of deals out of that fact. So there has been a clearly a massive disruption in the traditional ways of inbound and outbound supply chains. And out of that disruption and bottlenecks and reduction in traditional RoRo and multi-level capacity, we've seen a dramatic increase in requests across the board from both the startup EV type companies, but also the traditional OEMs. So that's been very good for us, and I think it's a clear sign of the times, which is that business as usual probably won't start anytime soon. There's going to be a lot of disruption, and a lot of it will remain long term, simply for the fact that I think there's more flexibility all around. Which is another point I wanted to mention, is that one thing we've also noticed is that on the OEM side, especially on the traditional OEMs in Europe and the US, there's a real willingness now to be a more transparent, more open book to really discuss, what we call niche lanes, where there's severe capacity constraints or frequency in sailings on the traditional RoRo side. We're seeing a lot of a willingness to really discuss those lanes, kind of open the books, give us background that a year ago we wouldn't get. So I think for us, and probably for traditional outbound logistics as well, I'm sure everybody's noticing it. There's a lot more willingness on the side of the OEM to really, have an open dialogue about creative solutions to solve some of those problems. So I would say those are the key indicators for us. It's just a big pickup in requests, mostly spot and ad hoc, to solve immediate issues, and then just in general a willingness on the OEM side to really talk straight about what's possible, what's not possible. That didn't used to be like that.
Sure. Well, the game's changed a little bit, right? So you have to change your strategy and communication strategy along with that, right?
Yeah,
sure.
Fantastic.
I'd like to bring Enrique and Nick back into the conversation. Thank you all for sharing some of those individual insights there. It was great to hear. I guess as a conversation, I'd like to kind of just maybe focus a little bit on where are these opportunities to continue to improve the agility and flexibility and to optimize that network. Is it through digitalization? Is it through digitalization tools, or working better and more collaborative with industry partners and other OEMs? Maybe we'll start with you, Nick, for some insights on that.
Yeah, I think I think it's a little bit of both. So from our perspective, we continue to collaborate with our partners. Data, absorbing all the mass amounts of data that are available out there and how to use it to better operate the business is something we're working at all the time. But what's unique about finished vehicles is just the shared network that exists, where from a rail perspective or even a truck perspective, everything's interchanged and very connected. And so how do we best use the data that exists to communicate across the different modes and across the different partners that are interconnected to ensure that we can proactively address any issues that come up, especially now this year, where we've seen a lot of variability and everybody's having to be agile. That's really important in our view, that openness of trying to understand the data and be proactively address those problems, I think is something we need to continue to do.
Yeah, sure. I think everybody's kind of data hungry at the moment, right? I think it's let's pull as much data as we can, but then I think it's the challenge of what you do with that data, right, and how you analyze it, and who's analyzing that as well, right? So I think
right, and then we've had some success with some of our rail partners in sharing the entire pipeline from once the vehicles load up, and that's helped us to see the problems before they hit, so we can work together to solve them. So it's not something that ends up backlogging that supply chain. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And from your perspective, Enrique, what's key to you? Of course, quality. You were talking about improving quality because, of course, volumes are down in that respect. So it's all about customer delivering to the customer expectations or beyond the customer expectations. What's important for you in that respect?
Yeah, in that respect, something that I wanna share is quality related from tools or another process that we can improve is better used to having all traceability, recording, just learning for what we did and what we're gonna do in the next steps. Just having a system in logistics, quality, and processes does help us to improve the service to our customers and to our final customer that is receiving the product, because our industry or logistics vehicles, it's different than the auto parts, because we handle the essential product outside. Just we have to take care all the time about the vehicle. If it's rain, if it's something dust or everywhere, we have to take care of the product all the time. Because it's something that we have to develop.
Sure.
In the industry.
Thanks, Enrique. I think there was actually a question for you specifically, so I'm just going to ask you that. Are you not affected by the lack of train equipment because of the Chilahua, excuse my pronunciation, train block? The train blockade?
Yeah, in Chihuahua.
Chihuahua. Yes. Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, it's hard, even for us at the beginning. But there are some cities that we can pronounce.
Sure.
Good. Well, those are something blockage that I heard in our side. We don't see any blockage. We don't have any affectation for the shipments, for our shipments. That is in the north, or we are in the north, but Chihuahua is in our side is affecting other routes that is handling by Ferromex or Ford, maybe others that are going through Ciudad Juarez. In our case, we don't have that affectation. Some cases that we have in the blockage is in the south, but it's for auto parts, but it's handling. We can handle it with trucks and divert some areas, but it's another that's another point.
Sure. And then, Nick, you're not affected by any of those activities, right, in your Mexican facilities, or you, Christoph, in...
So we have yes, there is a blockade that is impacting us in Mexico. It's been a situation where we've been able to collaborate with our partners down there to try to work around that in the short term as that's getting resolved. But it's just one of those things you deal with in the operations world that you got to adjust on the fly. So yeah,
sure. And I'm sure you're an expert in pronouncing the city.
I am not. I'm not. I'm glad Enrique did it for us. So.
And Christoph, there was actually something for you in terms of how the volumes of shipments in Ro-Ro versus containers to South America has changed. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, Latin America in general, so South America, Central America, and the Caribbean too, appear to be areas where we are getting definitely more requests than usual to look into particular lanes. A lot of it has to do with capacity reduction on the Ro-Ro side. Back in, I think, end of May, there was an estimate that roughly 40% of Ro-Ro capacity had been taken out of the market. I'm sure some of that is coming back or has come back. But definitely what that's created is sort of it's not a panic, but there definitely is a real need for at least exploring alternative options into some of those markets where, if you only sail once a month, it's not good for inventory and cost of capital and so on. So definitely have seen a big momentum there. A couple other issues, we don't do any significantly high volume business in and out of Mexico, so I can't really speak for that too much. But on the U.S. side, one of the big issues we're facing is container shortages, right? So the market, the eastbound Pacific market on the container side is booming right now. Prices going up. So there's definitely bottlenecks and capacity issues on the container side as well that are created through this dynamic that currently that trade is booming. Another area that I find very interesting, which is very Corona related, and I'm sure others in ops can relate to as well. How do you handle operations, especially when it comes to training or QC, implementing new programs? How do you do that when travel is so difficult? We have a project in Thailand right now. We have one in India and one in Brazil where we cannot travel. Usually we would send an A-team to sort of implement a new lane, train, and so on. We can't do that. So, something that we've learned and I'm quite excited about is how can we use technology to our advantage to work with overseas location where you can't easily travel to. Even in the future, when travel becomes relatively normal again, is it really necessary to travel anywhere? So we're starting. We've done our first sort of a trial container unload in India the other day, where we were virtually supervising the local team there, which had never touched a container like that, and we had no choice but to do it virtual, and it worked. It took a few hours, but we were able to actually get that done. And I think there's a lot more that across the board, whether it's rail operations, trucking, yards, factories, etc. I think everybody's getting very crafty about developing solutions, technological solutions to make ops easier, and that's where we're heavily investing right now. Is we're looking at literally a virtual reality type training program where we can train people on the other side of the world to how to load or unload a container and handle our type of racking equipment without us having to be there. So stuff like that. I mean, there's some real interesting dynamics coming out of this.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Christoph. I think that's an interesting point. I mean, how are you, Nick, and Enrique? How are you kind of managing that? Because of course there's travel restrictions for everybody, right? So how are you kind of, finding innovative ways to communicate with your teams and your partners in that respect? I know I've heard kind of stories speaking to other OEMs, for example. They use they're on a Teams call or something, they're actually walking around the warehouse or something like that. Are you kind of doing similar kind of things, or?
Yeah, I think we're leveraging the technology that's probably been around a little while, but just hasn't been used as much. As people are kind of used to doing it in person and things like that. We've had some tests and new lanes implemented. And what we've done in some of those situations is have the local people on the ground who are there already, and normally other people would fly in, actually do videos, and we've shared those kind of videos live to be able to work through those problems as best as possible with the limitations on travel. So that, and then obviously these video calls are a lot more common than they ever were before, which has helped us to continue to all be on the same page in regards to operations and changes in the day-to-day activities.
Absolutely. And for you, Enrique, are you managing it in a similar way?
Yes. Yeah, we do similar ways. Lucky we just shipping from one plant, because we can control more locally, and when we have to go outside to different vendors or different areas, because we do by other platforms, just to be in the same page as Nick mentioned.
Yeah, fantastic. And so maybe because we're kind of coming close to our time, so maybe I'll just ask you one final round, just in terms of the one thing that's been positive to come out of this situation, that's kind of driven a positive change, whether it's in the communications with your team or the culture, or that with the industry, or kind of innovative solutions. What's the kind of one positive element that's come out of this? And I'll put that to the floor, so whoever wants to jump in first.
I can go first. One thing, I can only speak for our company, but overall, I've seen a tremendous effort by all levels, whether it's managers or people in the warehouse floor. Overall, there's been a great move towards collaboration and flexibility. A lot of people working from home and doing a really great job. So I think this sort of a wake-up call for a lot of people of innovating themselves, innovating the business, collaborating, all those group dynamics in a very tough environment where you can't really be in a group together a lot of times. That to me is very encouraging. I think a lot of good will come out of that for businesses in general. That people have to improvise and collaborate and work from home and so on, and figuring it out. It's working, for most people. So I think that's a big plus.
Yeah.
Yep. In our case, our company is doing a great effort too. We are just adapting to the new normal, as everyone's saying, is going to the new normal, and taking care what is for this pandemic that is moving, just having us a lot of cautions for ourselves and for our operations, just because the fluctuation and all the processing that we have to handle on daily, we have to taking care of it.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think for my side of things, the way communication has kind of changed over this process, I think is really valuable. In a lot of situations, we would have the collaboration and things like that, but the frequency and the depth maybe has changed. I think now we're having more regular conversations that are more focused in nature and smaller. And I think it makes things more effective. And I think that's really been driven by the need to be flexible and agile. And so now we're talking more often, and I think that's helpful across the board.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm glad, of course, with every kind of situation, there's positives in that, and it's really great to see that there's positive elements that are coming out of this, greater collaboration, that kind of innovative mindset that's been there, with your suppliers and internally as well. It's great to see. I think there's lots more to come, no doubt, as things kind of move forward as well, right? So we'll continue to follow up with you and to see how things are shaping up as well. But I'd like to, as we're kind of approaching time now, so I'd like to thank you very much for sharing some really valuable insights there of what's happening in your worlds, and really appreciate the open conversation there. We'll certainly circle back and come back to you on those elements as well. The next session is starting in a few minutes, and that's a conversation where we're looking at leadership in a time of adversity. So please stay tuned for that one. That's a really interesting conversation. We've got some very senior logistics and supply chain heads talking there, include, of course, your good friend there, Nick, and colleague Mark Brazou. So tune into that one. I'm sure you'll gain some more valuable insights there. But for now, thank you very much, and it's been a great pleasure speaking with you today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.